Hello guys. So a lot of you have been requesting for some help with getting started with P2, and I just spent many hours implementing P2 myself. So here are some help. Uh, all of this is just recommendation. You can choose to follow it or you can do your own thing. So the first thing I'd say you should start with is markdown.h and friends. So if you look inside the scaffold, there's a markdown.h file, and inside this there's a bunch of functions. Right, make sure you implement these functions, and also when you are implementing these functions, make sure you understand the correct behavior. So what I mean by that is, if you look inside the specification and you go down to like the section where it talks about different edits on the same version, for example this example, um, even the markdown has to follow this behavior, right? So if I have two edits targeting the same version of the document, and then I increment the version, then the result should follow this behavior. So that's the first hint. So make sure you really understand the correct behavior so you don't implement the wrong thing. And also today we'll release some unit tests, and so hopefully you should be able to implement that and test it out. So at least your document editing is robust, right? Um, and the second thing I'd say you should do is set up the connection between the client and the server. So initially there's like a handshake, right? And then there's like the named pipe, which allows them to communicate. Make sure you do everything correctly, create a new thread for every named pipe, etc., etc. Make sure you read the specs closely, and then also make sure you design the overall system first, right? So for example, just a totally random example, if I choose to use, scanf or something, and maybe it's blocking, maybe it's not blocking, maybe it works with threads, maybe it doesn't work with threads, right? So that example has nothing to do with P2, but what I'm trying to say is make sure that when you choose to use a certain function or a certain design choice, like creating a new thread or using select, epoll, things like that, make sure you think clearly. It's like, okay, is this actually going to work for this use case, right? Or is maybe not the best solution, and a different design will make your solution much simpler. So the third part is sort of connecting it all together. So you need a document editing loop. So the loop has to exist on the server, which collects all the commands from the client, and also on the client, which collects the broadcast from the server and then edits the document accordingly. So I'd say just do it in this order. Some general hints. So even though the multiple edits on the same version might seem quite tricky, like because uh, the second or third edit targeting the same version of the document still needs to target the original intended cursor position that is unaffected by the first edit, right? So it might seem a bit hard to do, but there's actually an elegant solution to this problem. So just try and figure that out. And also, the ordered list seems like quite tricky, right? Because you have to renumber everything and all that stuff. But there's actually also an elegant solution to how you can do the ordered list. So those are my two hints for the two hardest parts of the assignment. Uh, Also, overall, try to limit the use of AI. So over the past weekend, I've tried every possible AI under the sun, right? Like, Gemini 2.5, ChatGPT o4, all the fancy stuff. And all of them have done a terrible job, um, and given me like, pretty much junk code. So if you are going to use AI, just create, still design the system yourself. I'd say like do 90% of the work yourself. And, if you just want like a simple, I don't know, something super simple, or you just get the AI to check your code, like you put your code in there and be like, oh, or maybe you can even talk to the AI about your design decisions, right? Like, I want to use, blah, 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 blah to achieve blah, blah, blah. Does this make sense? Right. So don't just chuck the spec in and let it code. Trust me, I've tried. You can try it yourself if you want, but it just doesn't work. This assignment is too complicated and the AI is not smart enough to figure out how to do it properly. Okay. So this point, I've sort of touched on this already, but you have to make sure your design decisions are solid before you start coding, because uh, if your design decisions or choices are wrong, it's actually impossible to implement this assignment, right? And you'll encounter all sorts of like race conditions and funny behaviors, and it just makes your own life miserable. So another tip I have is adding debugging headers. So what I mean by that is you can add macros like this at the top of your file, and that allows you um, to print out, where the line number is and so on and so forth as your program is running. So that can be helpful. Also, use debuggers, use GDB and so on. Next tip is make sure you use Valgrind and TSAN. So TSAN is thread sanitizer. So these are tools that can help you identify any memory errors and any thread-based errors, which which I'm sure there will be plenty of in your initial implementation. Also, something I forgot to mention is make sure you check the spec updates. So inside here, you can see that there's like a short version history, and there is like a that there has we've been constantly regularly updating the specs, and the idea is that um, the spec edits do not make the assignment harder, right? So the spec edits are either clarifications or fixing small errors in the specs, and also sometimes the changes make the implementation easier. So um, sometimes students complain that the specs update too much, but I've been trying really hard to limit the spec updates to just making making the assignment easier to implement, and all the changes are fairly minor. So even if a change happens later, you should be able to easily uh, add that to your code. And also at this point, I don't think the specs will be updating anymore. So, but just keep an eye out and regularly re-download the PDF. Okay, so just a quick demo of what the program might look like. Okay, so here you can see we have two terminals. So first of all, I'll just make, and just to recompile everything, make sure it's all up to date. And I'll run server with a 10-second or sorry, 1 second update loop. So you can see the server has started, and then I can run client with put in the server PID and put in my username. And you can see I'm registered now as part of the server. So if I send a command like insert 0 hello, the server will receive it. So if I do doc, you'll see that the document looks like this, hello. So similarly, if I do here, you'll see the document is synced. So I can run disconnect on the client, and the client will close and clean up everything. And then because no clients are connected, I can now run quit on the server, and it will also clean up everything. So that's just a quick demo of what the program should look like. So overall, hope you found this video useful, and good luck with implementing the assignment.